Welcome to the Friday edition of the NBA Exchange. We are ending this week. Fortunately, there's no basketball games to talk about because the Bucks have won the championship. They had their parade downtown Milwaukee. You got to see everybody out there. Giannis with the trophy, with people. The whole Bucks team celebrating with the city of Milwaukee as they won their first title in 50 years. Hats off once again to the Bucks. But as we move from NBA basketball, we're now headed to Olympic basketball and the draft and free agency. We're going to discuss all that coming up on today's episode of the NBA Exchange. So the NBA season is over. We've crowned the champion. But as I said in the last show, there still is a lot to talk about. And my guest today, for the first time on this show, got somebody north of the border from Canada, my man Josh Eberley. Joining me here, NBA writer, podcaster. He does it all. Josh, what's up? How are things north of the border, man?
It's going well, man. It's going well. It's great to be off for the summer. It's nice that Olympic basketball is here and I don't have to go through any withdrawals. But it's crazy because it does feel like basketball has been nonstop for like 18 months now.
Yeah, it does, right? Basketball never stops, and it really has been that way from the start of the pandemic. We had the bubble. We go into this crazy 72-game season. So when we look back at this 2020-21 season, Josh, and everything that it was, the condensed season, like I said, what do you make of it? Was it a successful season? Was it an exhausting season to watch? There's so many emotions you can have around it. What do you make of this past season?
Yeah, I think both. Like, I think on the successful front, if you've been following the ratings, or that's something you care about, the NBA saw huge leaps in their ratings from the bubble and small leaps from the year prior. And I think, given the fact that it wasn't a big market finals matchup, it wasn't the dream NBA finals matchup, a lot of people were still tuning in. The numbers were still up. The product was great. Like, it was a really competitive, fun finals. It was a really competitive, fun playoff run. I think given all of the things that they went through in the quick turnaround, the league did well. They had a good year. I don't know if all the players would agree given the injuries and how condensed the schedule was and everything that came with that. But on a whole, I think the NBA's got to be happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, I think they have. They got through this pretty safely. We didn't see any major stars get injured or come down with COVID during the finals. So that was a success. But like you said, Josh, basketball never stops. Next week, we are under a week away from the NBA draft. There's a lot of things you can talk about the draft. Cade Cunningham expected to go number one. A lot of talk about people moving up and down. What do you expect with this draft this year? This is considered to be a draft that people say are 5 to 6 deep in terms of players. Do you expect a lot of activity? What expectations do you have for this 2021 NBA draft?
I feel like it's going to be busy. I feel like there's a lot of anticipation following Cade Cunningham. It really feels like most teams think this draft takes a bit of a dip after pick 4. I know that we're at just a point in the NBA right now where I think things look relatively open, and the Brooklyn Nets on paper are going to be the favorite probably the next 2 years significantly, but their durability issues leave things somewhat in the air. And I think there's a lot of teams that are ready to make moves and want to stay competitive and are looking at a window here. So I would not be surprised if we got quite a few deals on draft night.
Yeah, that's a good point. This isn't when the Warriors were, dominating the league for about 5 years. People might have said, hey, we want to relax. We might not want to make moves. So it's really going to be interesting to see draft night if we see a lot of those moves. Now, right after we're done with the draft, free agency opens. Not a lot of big names that are on the market here, Josh. But do you think we'll also have an active NBA free agency, or do you expect to see a lot of trades during that too, based on what you said about how you think a lot of teams have a chance here? What do you think NBA free agency is going to be like?
I think it'll be busy too. I think it'll be busy. The crop of free agents that are out there are not the guys that people thought would be, right? Like, a lot of people had hopes that Giannis might be in this mix, that Paul George might be in this mix. There was a higher expectation, but that being said, there were quite a few teams with money who positioned themselves for this offseason, and not all of those teams get to keep that money going into next year. So I would look for things to be busy, and it's interesting because you don't, unless Kawhi does something crazy and he decides that he's leaving the Clippers, I don't see a guy out there that immediately moves the needle from someone to go from, contender to favorite or from fringe playoff team to contender. But there will be someone that has that kind of impact. And it's really interesting when there's so many wings and guards, relatively close to each other. This is where front offices really differentiate, who's who, because somebody's going to go out there and be a huge difference maker next year, and someone's going to get massively overpaid. And you think about the names, especially at the wing, I think it'll be interesting in that regard.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. You even have former Raptor DeMar DeRozan wondering what his value could be in the market. Can he still help a team? What will somebody pay him? But then I also wonder about the storylines around free agency coming up this offseason too, Josh. It's not in terms of who might get signed, but a lot of it could be on somebody who's already on a roster. Who could be traded? Could this be Ben Simmons, all the drama surrounding him? Could this be Damian Lillard and all the drama surrounding him as well? So when you look at this offseason, what's the most interesting storyline or player you think that might get traded this offseason?
I think it's still Dame. I'm not convinced by the follow-up press conference that Damian Lillard isn't looking to move out. I think he's been planting seeds for a fair bit here, and he's got this chance to exit the Blazers while being the good guy because of how poorly that franchise has conducted itself really in the last 6 months, but maybe on a whole over the last couple of years. I think Damian is the name that's out there. It seems like Bradley Beal is someone that everyone gravitates to, but Bradley Beal has literally said a million times he doesn't want to leave.
Yeah, right.
So I think Dame is possible. I think teams are going to make that call. Ben Simmons might be moved, but the thing with the Ben Simmons situation is I think his value has lowered enough that the offers that Philly will get back will be somewhat uninspired. And if you're Daryl Morey and you wouldn't deal Ben Simmons for James Harden, I think the optics on moving him, then the upcoming offseason for a Malcolm Brogdon and a pick or some lesser sort of deal is just too grotesque to jump into. So I would not be shocked if Ben Simmons actually starts the season as a Sixer and they don't find the right deal for him.
Wow, a lot of people in Philadelphia probably would not be happy about that. I know some folks who do not want him back at all, but I hear what you're saying. His value might not be what we think that it is. Now, you're Canadian, north of the border. Canadian basketball has been on the rise. A lot of Canadian players in the NBA, Josh. We'll get to the Olympic team in a second and or the potential Olympic team, not an Olympic team, but how they were a little disappointing in Olympic qualifying. But when you look at Canadian basketball, who's up next in Canada? Canada's produced a lot of talent. Who's up next? What are some players to watch for Canadian basketball?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Canada has probably never had the overall talent that they're pumping out right now, which is, last year, Canada had the most of any non-American country, the most players in the NBA. So it seems like they're putting out a lot of names. Your producer, Greg, did mention Elijah Fisher. He's someone that a lot of Canadians are excited about, see as a guy who could be a star in the league. But I think, honestly, this crop of young guards that Canada has now in the league are being looked at as like the face of Team Canada going forward. And it's unfortunate that really Shea and Jamal Murray couldn't go into the Olympics, because I'd imagine that they're going to be the staples of the national team the next 10 years.
Yeah, you would think so. And speaking about that, how disappointing was it for Canadian basketball that they didn't make it? They had a tough loss to the Czech Republic in Olympic qualifying. They get knocked out of that. They're not able to compete in the Olympics. What's the vibe in Canada? Is everybody really disappointed in the Canadian basketball team?
Yeah, man. Canada's not as patriotic as the States, and basketball interest is still so far down the line in comparison to hockey. So I would say the camp is kind of twofold. There's like a large portion of Canadian basketball fans that are kind of newer to basketball and see the talent that's in the league and see the talent coming up, and they think, the sky's the limit. We just got to be patient. And then there are those of us who've been basketball fans since birth, and we've been hearing that for 20 years now on the Canadian national team. And honestly, if you asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have just looked deadpan to the camera and refused to talk about it, because it was so frustrating, man. This is an Olympics that's somewhat open to. Team USA is the favorite. When I checked last, they're plus 300. But this is a year where Canada could have done something, potentially medaled. You look across, you look at the other teams, Canada, relative to every other country in the world other than USA has comparable or greater talent. So for them to go out and lose and not even be there is so infuriating. And Andrew Wiggins had just an amazing moment in that game. They force OT. Satoransky's shot was incredible. But what really stands out is the fact that Canada could not get any of their big men to come out. And it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, all due respect to Kelly Olynyk and Tristan Thompson, who have put in a lot of time with this team. But neither of them coming out, they were relying on Anthony Bennett and Andrew Nicholson and Aaron Dornkamp and a bunch of guys who really shouldn't have been getting minutes at that level. Trey Lyles was their starting big man. And I can't even remember his name, but the Czechs had a big guy who basically Andre Drummond Canada. He had like 22 rebounds or something in that game. Canada could just not take care of the glass. There's been a lot made about the chemistry and putting that team together last minute, and all of that is fair. But Canada had the talent to be in the Olympics. They really did, and it was truly disappointing they didn't get it done.
Yeah, I was really shocked and disappointed they didn't make it because I wanted to see that talent on the big stage. And I think, like you said, Josh, they absolutely had a chance to be a team that could have medaled here in this Olympics. But last thing, you talked about everything we've watched, right, in terms of basketball. Are you, as someone, I love basketball, do the show, are you experiencing any basketball fatigue as we head into this Olympics? It's nice we don't have to maybe watch these games every night. We get to watch some group play starting Sunday. Are you experiencing basketball fatigue, and what are you expecting out of basketball in the Olympics?
You know what? I'm actually feeling it a lot less this year than in years past, because there have been years where the season ends and I'm done. I'm tapped. It's been a lot, but I wasn't doing any game recap stories this year, and so like some of the more menial stuff that I'd done in past years, I didn't have to do it. Maybe part of that is why I feel still very fresh, excited to cover some Olympic basketball, because, and maybe it's the fact too that the Olympics do feel like it's possible, like Luka and Slovenia could do something, or France could do something, or Australia, who we saw beat USA in the preseason or whatever. So I maybe it's the fact that it doesn't feel like such a cakewalk that has me intrigued.
Yeah, it's very, very intriguing. If you had to pick right now, who are you picking to win gold at the Olympics? Going with the U.S. or going with somebody else?
It's still got to be like as bad as they were in Vegas at times, and as ridiculous as Pop was not answering very fair questions.
Agreed.
It's hard to imagine a team with Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, and Kevin Durant not figuring it out, right? I think, and I know Patty Mills internationally is Steph Curry, but I don't see it.
Don't see it happening. All right, well, Josh, thank you, man, for joining me here on the NBA Exchange. Glad you are well north of the border, and we need Canada basketball to get on track so we can see them compete at a high level on the world stage. We got it, man. We got it. Like, I was heartbroken. I'm still a little heartbroken. This was a year Canada should have been in there for silver or bronze at a minimum. It's tough.